Okay, without further ado, we have our membership committee co-chair slash member at large, Jasmine Carr, who will be interviewing her grandmother, Miss Carolyn Williamson Green, who was the caregiver to Queen Mother Rosa Parks. So without further ado, I'm going to get my popcorn and I'm going to enjoy this. Jasmine, you're up. Take it away.
Hey, and actually, I need to backtrack a little bit and give the membership update. We have our kickoff for the Divine Nine Challenge coming up in April. And so we're doing outreach to all of the historically Black fraternities and sororities that serve Northern Virginia. The competition ends in July. So whoever signs up the most new applications will win a $500 scholarship, and they can decide what they want the programming to be for that, as well as attend a scholarship ceremony. We still need to plan that, and they will be highlighted in our newsletter. So that is our update for membership. So with that, before I got started, I'd like to also thank President Zimmerman and the XCOM committee for allowing us to come and share some of these memories. We're really excited about this. You know, at a time where history is being erased, Black history, which is American history, I feel like storytelling and oral history is even more important in these times to share. So, next slide, please. Well, most of you all already know me, so I will not introduce myself, but I will introduce the woman of the hour. And unfortunately, you can't see that we're wearing matching sweatshirts. That was her idea. This is my grandmother, Carolyn Williamson Green. She is the cousin and caregiver of Rosa Parks. She also co-founded the well-known Detroit organization Community United for Progress, and they work to improve the conditions of senior citizens as well as the youth in the city of Detroit. She has starred in several documentaries. The first is the Academy Award nominated and Daytime Emmy winner documentary Mighty Times: The Legacy of Rosa Parks. I was also featured in that documentary alongside my two cousins, Donnell and Dante Green, and Dante is actually on the call tonight. The second is My Life with Rosie, a bond between cousins, and this documentary is entirely about her relationship with Rosa. Um, my cousin's wife, Dr. Angela Williamson, produced it and did an amazing job. She also wrote the children's book, My Life with Rosie, to go along with the documentary. It was an Amazon bestseller, even though I know we're not going to Amazon right now. But it was also voted the best book to expose children to the civil rights movement in Mothering Magazine. And then last but not least, she starred in The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks. That was featured at the Tribeca Film Festival. And due to her work in community service and the civil rights movement, she's been the recipient of many awards, including the City of Detroit and Wayne County Lifetime of Service Awards. And she was also awarded by the City of Los Angeles for her community service. And these are some of the covers of all of the documentaries. Next slide, please. Okay, now first, I'd just like to give everyone an overview of some of Rosa's family origins. In between the slides, I'll be asking my grandmother some interview questions, and I'm also providing here some direct quotations from Rosa over the years. So just for clarity purposes, we are related to Rosa through our maternal lineage, which is the Edwards family. And her great-grandfather was James Percival. He was an indentured Scots-Irish servant who married Mary Jane Nobles, an enslaved African. So their daughter Rose wed Sylvester Edwards, and they had three daughters: Fanny, who is my great-great-grandmother, Bessie, and Rose's mother Leona, and one brother, Sonny. So she was actually named after her mother's mother and her father's mother, Louise. And to the right, we have some photos here. At the top left is Rosa's father, James Macaulay. To the right is Leona Edwards Macaulay, her mother. To the left bottom is Sylvester Edwards. And to the right is Rosa's only brother, Sylvester Macaulay. So these are from Rosa's words. Deserted by my father at 2.5 years, shortly before brother's birth. Mother was with her semi-invalid parents. Great-grandfathers playing with my brother and me. He was an ex-slave of Scotch-Irish descent. African ancestry, either remote or non-existent. He died when I was 6 years old. My mother came back to the rural part of Montgomery County, Pine Level, Alabama, to live with her parents, my grandmother, and grandfather. This is when my brother was born. Next slide, please. Okay, we'll get into a little more of Rosa's childhood, which was not all peaches and creams. They were very, very rough growing up in Alabama during those times. To the right is her mother, Leona, and cousin Beatrice. You'll also see throughout this presentation many photos that are, personal to us, but that are also in the Library of Congress. So this is another direct quote. Mother taught school in the rural community where we lived. KKK moved through the county, burning Negro churches, schools, flogging and killing. Grandfather stayed up to wait for them to come to our house. He kept his shotgun within reach at all times. My aunt, a widow, my great-great-grandmother Fanny, and her 5 small children, one of which is my great-grandfather, Thomas Williamson, came to our house at night. We cannot undress and go to bed at night. The doors and windows were boarded and nailed tight from the inside. I stayed awake many nights keeping vigil with Grandpa. I wanted to see him kill a Ku Kluxer. He declared the first to invade our home would surely die. This is when I was 6 or 7, and none came into our house. So this is my first question for you, Grandma. How would you describe Rosa?
Well, she didn't plan to be a civil rights activist. It came on her by accident. It was an accident. She was quiet, and everything she did for her people. She was just an awesome lady. She was quiet, and she wasn't just a civil rights activist. She was also a wife, daughter, sister, aunt, cousin. She was many, and she had a lot of friends. So she was many things. She was quiet in nature, but she would always let you know if she didn't agree with you. She would do it without any, her body language wouldn't change and her voice would never go up.
The minister, these committees and appointing all the members.
But you knew that she didn't agree with you. She was a avid reader. And a lot of people don't know she was also a deaconess.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
And so she loved people, she adored children, and that's what I can say about Rosa Parks. Yes.
So why do you call her Rosie?
Well, me and my siblings called her Rosie. We couldn't say Rosa. My dad even called her Rosie, but my kids call her Auntie Rosie. My Aunt Ann's kids call her Auntie Rosie, but me and my siblings always called her Rosie. Yeah. So if you hear me say Rosie, that's what I've been calling her all my life.
Because I've been called a granddaughter, everything. I'm like, no, she didn't have any kids. So she is my cousin, but I hope this illustrates why we'll call her my great aunt. As you'll see in the further slides, she was raised with my grandfather like siblings.
Yes.
So with that, let's go to the next slide. Okay, now this is talking specifically to Rosa's adolescence with my great-great-grandmother Fanny. She actually lived with Fanny while attending the Montgomery Industrial School, where she received a scholarship. So this was at a pivotal time of her adolescence. We're talking here from 11 to almost out of high school. So that was a long period of time where she primarily stayed with my aunt. Not my aunt, I'm sorry, my great-great-grandmother. So here are some excerpts from another interview she did later in her life where she talks about her childhood. And the interviewer asked, did you live with relatives then or board? And Rosa said, I live with my mother's sister most of the time and sometimes other people. I stayed once in a while with one of my mother's girlfriends, but most of the time I was with my mother's sister. And what was your aunt's name that you stayed with? Her name was Fanny Williamson. She was a widow. And to the right are some pictures of my great great grandmother. The one on the left is actually currently displayed at the King Museum. And the one on the right is also both are in Alabama, sometime between the 1920s to the 1930s. And this is in the Library of Congress. So, Grandma, I have another question.
Yeah.
What kind of woman was Fanny? I mean, we know she helped to shape Rosa's character. What did you hear about her from great granddad?
Okay. Yes, because she died when I was a baby, so everything I heard was through my siblings and my aunts and my dad. And from what I've been told, she adored her grandchildren. She adored them. Her grandchildren was not going to regular school. They went to private school. And grandma, she was a classy woman, God-fearing, um, caregiver, compassionate. She took care of her sister. She loved people, and she wanted to make sure her sister and her sister children was okay. So the whole family was a close-knit family. So they took care of one another. So that's what I can say about Grandma Fanny.
Now, how did great granddad describe his childhood in Alabama during that time?
My dad,
Yeah,
um, like it was burning and raping, and all that was there, but they was a close-knit family, and they had each other, and they knew they had each other. So that's the only thing I know about his childhood, and I know how they would go to their granddad's house. They would walk there, and most men would only take the men fishing.
right.
But their grandfather took everybody fishing who wanted to go. And it was the story about who was gonna catch. They would be laughing and talking. They was little kids,
Right, right.
who was gonna catch the biggest fish. But I never found out who caught the biggest fish. Rosie said she did, and Dad always said he did. So I never found out about
I love that actually,
that.
because if you all will begin to see how much of a feminist Rosa was for that time, in her narratives that she's written and many of her interviews, even though she seemed kind of meek, she was anything but traditional. We'll go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit more about Rosa and the Williamsons. Now, this is another direct quote from Rosa because she, Fanny, was so ill, she would take me along with her children to the place where she worked and, help her to do some of the work that she couldn't do, cleaning and doing dishes and so on. And we did a great deal of work under her supervision. It was a job. Now, as I said before, Rosa and Fanny's children, including my great grandfather, they grew up together in the same household for many years. And so their relationship was more like siblings than cousins. And there's some pictures of them on the right. To the left is my great grandfather, Thomas Williamson, his brother Howard, and below his sister, Annie Mae Cruz. I'm going to let my grandma tell a story about what's mentioned below about a really scary night that Rosa and her mother, Leona, witnessed, and it had something to do with my great grandfather and his brother. If you don't mind telling us about that.
Oh yes, Rosie told me about the story. She said that my uncle Howard, my father's brother, he had beat up a white boy. He was 15 at the time, and I guess when he came home and told his mom, I mean my grandmother, they knew they had to get him out of town. They got him out of town, but the mob came and they was gonna hang my dad. And Rosie said all the girls and everybody was praying. And then the white boy who got beat up came and said, "Oh no, that's not the one," like that. So they let my father alone. But Howard was probably in Ohio by then because they got him out right away. They put him on the train and he got out right away. Yeah.
And hey, if that would have happened to my great grandfather, we wouldn't be here. Yeah, we
No,
wouldn't be here.
no, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Next slide, please. And now we're going to get into what everyone knows Rosa for, her activism. And before I get into that, there's a picture to the right, and this is actually at an NAACP branch meeting in Montgomery. And the man to her left is actually her husband, Raymond Parks. A lot of people have never seen him before, but he was one of the main people who got her into activism. She's quoted as saying he was the first real activist I ever met. Um, and through this empowerment with the relationship and just everything she had experienced that we've discussed and just the rough times in Alabama at that time, she was civically minded. And so she discovered women could even be a part of the NAACP through a flyer she saw in another branch out of the state. And so she came to the meeting at the Montgomery branch on election day, where she was elected secretary on the spot and was the only woman at that time. So, over the next 10 years where she joined the branch, she collaborated with E.D. Nixon, who was a very militant union organizer. And so they wanted to transform the branch into a more activist organization, really focused on criminal justice. So, this is a quote from Nixon, who was the president. Her mother, Leona, warned that the white folks would lynch us, both her and me. Mrs. Parks and I were a part of the NAACP at a time when other African Americans were hesitant to associate with us. He's also been quoted as saying, whenever there was an issue with a black person in Montgomery, they would say, "Go to Rosa, she'll help you." So over time, eventually they were both elected to lead the Alabama State Conference. For those who aren't aware of the structure of the organization, the local branches deal with local issues. So the state conference deals with the entire state. And you can see they pretty much, led the entire state at one point. Also, she worked on some pretty high profile cases advocating for Reese Taylor and Gertrude Perkins. These were two black women that were sexually assaulted by white men and did not receive justice, and she diligently worked on those cases. I do have a question for you, Grandma, from here.
Okay.
So, what role did Rosa's faith, you think, play in her activism?
It played a big role in her activism. Because before she would do anything, she would always go to God first. She would always go to God first. And before any decision be made, she prayed about it. And that's why she didn't get up off the bus. She just sat there. And if she hadn't, we wouldn't be here today. But God is the one told her to do that.
Yes,
Really,
definitely,
yeah.
definitely. All right, next slide, please. Okay, now this is the meat and potatoes of her activism. This is when the boycott began, or right before the boycott began. A lot of people do not realize that Rosa was a trained activist. I'm sure most of us here were learned, we know the history, we're aware of this. But so many people in the general public have no idea that she was trained for many years in advocacy. So, what actually helped to give her some inspiration was her time at the Highlander Folk School, where this was a training center for labor and civil rights activists all over the country. And Septima Clark, the well known South Carolina activist educator, led this 2-week workshop for her, and she actually mentored Rosa. And this was right before the Montgomery bus boycott began. So, as most people know in the history, on December 1st, 1955, she was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama, for disorderly conduct for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man. On February 21st, 1956, a Montgomery grand jury indicted Rosa, Martin Luther King Jr., and the president of the branch, E.D. Nixon, and 86 other bus boycott participants for violating the Alabama Anti-Boycott Act of 1921. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is Women's History Month, And, you know, what people need to understand, and Rosa never shied away from this, but unfortunately, these stories were never told. Boycotts were happening all over the country, you know, decades before Rosa did what she did. So this was not in a bubble. And I feel like it's our duty as relatives to also make sure that these women who also did the same thing, who also were so brave and courageous, receive the credit that they deserve and that history in a lot of these cases never gave them. So I'm going to go over 4 women, well, actually 8 women, that I consider pioneers of the movement. So, first, I'd like to talk about Viola White. At age 35, she was arrested and assaulted in 1944 for not relinquishing her seat. And actually, Rosa was very inspired by this. Above, pictured from left to right, is Marianne Musgrove, Ruth Powell, Ruby O'Hara, and Ruth Ann Robinson. And this is actually a local story for those who are not aware. These 4 women, they're from Howard University, and they stood against Virginia's Jim Crow laws by refusing to sit at the back of a public bus. And this happened 11 years prior to Rosa's action. And I was really honored to be one of the speakers at Meadowlark Botanical Gardens in early February. They unveiled a sign giving these women their flowers, which is so deserved, in conjunction with Nova Parks as well. Next slide, please. Came more pioneers of the movement. To the right, Sarah Mae Fleming. Fleming was an activist who was forcibly removed from the bus in Columbia, South Carolina. This is 17 months before Rosa did what she did in 1955. And her case is so important because it actually set the bar, was pivotal for the Parks case legally. And I need to give one of our other members some shine here because she let me know that this is her aunt, our chair for communications, Michelle Pulliam.
Right.
I was so grateful that she shared this story with me. And in South Carolina, there's even a day dedicated to her. So I felt like it was so important to make sure that she gets this acknowledgement. And a lot of people know the brave young woman to the left, Claudette Colvin. On March 2nd, 1955, she was only 15, and she was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama, for refusing to yield her seat to a white woman. Yes, Michelle. And a lot of people don't realize that Rosa and Claudette, they knew each other. They had a relationship. In fact, Rosa tried to get Claudette to maintain her membership in the branch, which was difficult. People didn't have vehicles. She was in the youth council and she saw leadership quality in Claudette. And Claudette has been quoted as saying, well, Rosa was one of the few people who kept in touch with me. So these are all just very brave, special women, and I wanted to make sure that their stories were heard. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is kind of controversial, but we're going to tackle it. Respectability politics and the role of women in the civil rights movement. Now, as you've heard from the history we've shared, Rosa's childhood was no means an easy one. And even though she was very fair, she was still the target of violence and oppression. But we have to keep in mind respectability politics because it's in play then and it's still in play now. Rosa's image was digestible to the public. And the civil rights movement at that time needed a role model. They needed someone who could not be discredited in any way. And so, respectability politics, I'll break it down. Um, in quote, to achieve Black uplift, many leaders and activists promoted middle class values such as traditional gender roles, diligence, thriftiness, cleanliness, and moderate religious practices. Rosa was respected by both the working class and the middle class. And this is not, of course, to take away anything because she was trained for many years, risking her life on the line for her work. But we know that she had a digestible persona. She came across as meek, even though we know that is not true. She supported Marcus Garvey's, teachings, which a lot of people don't know. And her militant views even put her at odds with other civil rights leaders, especially further in the movement. So this meek and, mild woman was just an exterior. But, you can't argue with the fact that appearances matter and respectability politics are still happening to this day. When you think about a Michael Brown, a George Floyd, a Trayvon Martin, the first tactic is to take away their humanity whenever something happens. So this is still at play today. And Claudette Colvin actually said, later, I had a child born out of wedlock. I became pregnant at 16. I didn't fit the image of someone they wanted to showcase. And I hope we can continue to learn from these instances. And it's not, again, taking anything away because she was trained for that moment. You know, she was prepared for the boycott moment. But this is something that exists, and we would be remiss to not touch on it. Women as well were excluded from national leadership in the civil rights movement despite their efforts in mobilizing support. And I always say the first lessons that people receive are in the home from their mothers. So they had long range influence, but they were not given these leadership positions. And this was actually found in Rosa's notes. Women, 1/2 the world population, 2/3 work done by women, 1/10 income, less than 1/100th power. And Grandma, for you, I do have a question. What do people get wrong about Rosa?
Well, they say she was tired, her feet was tired, but that wasn't true. Her soul was tired. She was tired of her people being treated the way they was being treated. You know, back then it was the hanging and the beating and the raping, all that. She was tired of it. And another thing they get wrong is that her face was the face of the movement because of her color. And that's not true because she was fair skinned, but that wasn't true either. God chose her, period.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to get into the move to Detroit. We'll explain what was happening in Alabama and why she had to actually make that move. So, due to her participation in the boycott, she lost her job. Her husband lost his job. Their house was burned down. Her mother even lost her job, I'd heard. So basically anyone around her was targeted, constant death threats, not able to find any kind of employment. And when you have such a high profile like that, you can't hide anywhere, especially in the Deep South where everyone knows everyone. So in 1957, Rosa and her mother Leona first came up to Detroit, and soon after her husband Raymond came. And unfortunately, Raymond passed before I was born, so I never got to meet him. But to the left is actually a receipt, and this is in the Library of Congress, and it's special because it lists that my great-grandfather wired $300 and the Montgomery Improvement Association collected $800 to help cover her moving expenses. And Grandma.
Yes.
So this is a good story. You were there when the call came that night.
Yes.
To let you know that she had to get out of Alabama. Can you tell them about that?
Yes, I was laying on the floor reading a book, and an Ann called. I answered the phone, and she asked me, she says, Thomas? No, she said, is Thomas home? I said, yes. I said, but he's sleep on there. And she said, well, tell him to get up. It's family business. So I went in, I got him up, and he came, and I heard him say, I'll go to the bank tomorrow. We'll get him out of there.
So how do you think the economic situation was for her and her husband when they moved to Detroit?
Well, when Rosie, right after then, Rosie and Aunt Lee came, and that's Rosie's mother. We call her Aunt Lee, and they stayed with us a couple of weeks. I guess Dad and my Aunt Ann and my Aunt Henny Mae probably helped them find a place. Then Parks came, so for them it was probably like everybody else who came south from the south. They stayed with families a couple of weeks or so, and then they got their own place. but they didn't have no problems because our family was gonna make sure they had something to eat and they had somewhere to sleep because they was a close knit family and they took care of one another.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, now before we go forward, I just wanted to show you all some never before seen family photos. Rosa was a staple at all of our family events, weddings, graduation parties, retirement parties, funerals. I mean, everything. She traveled to see everyone. She loved her family and was extremely active. So we just wanted to share some of these. And I saw from the list that quite a few people in these photos are actually on the call tonight. So thank you all for coming to support us. Um, to the left, I'll just kind of make a quick description, is myself, my cousin Dante and Donnell Green, and Rosa. And this actually was from the cover of the Mighty Times, The Legacy of Rosa Parks video, the documentary rather. And then to the right is Rosa, my cousin Sandra and James Cruz, and grandma. And this was at my cousin Eric's wedding. And then further to the right is my mom. Hi, mom. And Rosa. And then furthest to the right is Uncle Thomas in the left and my Aunt Barbara in the back and Rosa in the front. And this was taken in Los Angeles. To the left bottom is my Aunt Barbara. I know she's on the call. And Rosa, and this was in our house in LA. In the middle is my Aunt Alice, who I also saw was on, Grandma and Rosa. And to the right is my Uncle Dale, Rosa, and Grandma, and actually in the house that we're in now. Next slide, please. Okay, the Rosa Parks story. This is when you got your acting debut. But the Rosa Parks story was featured on CBS in 2002. It was a biography about her life. And that starred Angela Bassett, Peter Francis James, and the late Cicely Tyson. And you see my grandma there, pictured with Angela Bassett. But she was actually the familiar advisor and consultant for this movie. So can you let them know why you were picked to be the advisor?
Well, Rosa Parks, when the studio called that morning, Rosa Parks had told them, gave a thing. She wasn't able to go, and she told them I would know more about her. Call me, and that's when they asked me, did I have any grandchildren who could be a part of it? And that's when I got you. I got you. But both of them happened the same day. Yes, but Rosa Parks told them.
And I have a quick story about Mighty Times, The Legacy of Rosa Parks. So it was created in a series called Teaching Tolerance. So this went out to all the schools in conjunction with the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I was in high school, and we had talked about Rosa a lot growing up. So I didn't think it was going to be as big as it was, and I didn't tell anybody at school. So we're sitting down and they play it, and I'm in the back like, oh, I know what's coming. And they're like, wait, Jasmine? And they ended up showing it to everybody in the school, which, was almost mortifying for a really reserved person like me. But no, I was very honored. I was very honored. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to start to talk about how my grandmother became Rosa's caregiver. Now, these are pictures that a lot of people haven't seen. These were, she got older, toward the end of life, and you can tell that at that point she had become frail and, really did need more medical support. So, if you don't mind, how did you end up becoming her caregiver?
Well, I was getting ready to retire. I was a troubleshooter for GM. And one of my girlfriends who was giving the party said, I know how we can have a real nice party if your aunt come. I don't care how many times I say cousin. They say they say aunt. So I told her, I said, well, I could call her and see will she be able to come. I say, but you know how they go, Faye. I say she might wake up and don't feel good. So when I got home, I called Rosie and she said, "Oh yeah, I'll definitely come." I said, "Well, Loretta, that's my sister." I said she would pick you up. So I the next day when I got to work, I went to medical and asked for a wheelchair because I knew it would be too long for her to walk from the parking lot all the way to where the party was. And so I was telling her, she said, "Well, who is it for?" And I said, "Rosa Parks." She said, "The Rosa Parks?" And I told the nurse, "Yes, that Rosa Parks." She said, "Well, she'll get a wheelchair, but she's going to have her own private nurse while she there." And so we was leaving the retirement party, and she said, "Well, since you retired, now you can come check on me." I said, "Okay, I will." Well, my sister Barbara had flew in from California for my retirement party, and we went to see her. So while I was down there, she said, "Well, when are you going to start coming?" And I said, "Well, I come once a week." So I came once a week, and then she fell and broke her leg, and I had to go to the hospital and everything. And then I started coming more. I had to go every day when she got out the hospital. And the more I went, the older she got, and the more a need for me to be there. So that's how I became her caregiver.
So why do you think you all had a special bond?
Well, I don't know. Really, I mean, it might be because she always said I look like Aunt Fan, and that was her cousin sister. And then I don't know, when she would go out of town, she just would call and let me know where she was going. If I couldn't get in touch with her, who I could call to get in touch with if anything ever happened. But then my son, my youngest son, Dale, was born December the 1st, and she would always write him all the time when he was in school,
For
trying
the
to
day of the
motivate him.
boycott, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, motivate him. And so I don't know if it was one of them three reasons or what, but she just chose me for these things.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is another rare photo. Now, this is one of the last photos that we took with her together as a family. This was her 90th birthday celebration, as well as a family reunion celebration. And I was actually the mistress of ceremonies. I was in the back, and I look a little different than I do now. But this is one of the last times that we were able to be with her together. So I just felt like this was a great photo to see the family as well. Next slide, please. Okay, now just a few years later, she passed away, October 24th, 2005. Her funeral was in Detroit, the place she had made her home, and later she lay in honor in the United States Capitol Rotunda. I remember being at the funeral in the procession, and I had never seen anything like that. I mean, crowds of people for as far as you can see all the way down 7 Mile. If you're a Detroiter, you know what I'm talking about when I say 7 Mile. I mean, I've never seen anything like that to this day. But you do have a special story. If you don't mind sharing it, you were with her when she passed. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, okay. I get a call that morning when they asked me, they wanted me to come down there. She wasn't herself. So they said, when you drop the kids off, because I was taking the grandkids to school, and would you come down here? So I went down, and so I talked to her, and she seemed to be perking back up. And I read scripture like we always do, read, because she was an avid reader. And so I would read to her and different scriptures and everything. So she seemed to be pretty good. So when the children got out of school, I went to pick them up, came home. I get another call about 5 o'clock. She's not doing good. So I go back down there, and I was holding her hand, and there was a holistic doctor there. I was holding her hand, and we was talking, and I was reading scripture to her again because she loved to read scriptures. And all of a sudden, her hand kind of left mine. And the next thing I knew, I called her, say, she's still, and when the holistic died, she said, she's passed. And so the only thing that really helped me, I kept saying in my mind once she told me, people don't like to die alone. And I kept putting that in my mind. She didn't. Yeah.
And I'm glad you were there for her. Yeah. Next slide, please. And this will go ahead, Grandma.
Okay.
So
go ahead. And the funeral, not only there, we went to Alabama, Washington, and then it came here.
Okay.
Yeah, we had speakers at all of it, and like the streets was in Detroit. They was everywhere we went. When we got to the airport, the people was lined up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even in here at the airport, Alabama, and we left Alabama. It was Southwest Airlines gave us the plane, and it was I think the first 2 Black pilots flew the plane. All this was about, everybody volunteered. And when they left, they did the wings over Alabama. So it was kind of touching. Yeah.
Now the last one is a video. I am trying to see if it's gonna play. Okay, perfect. So before you play it, now this was my cousin Dante Green. He's on the call. And he was the youngest person to speak at the funeral, which was full of, dignitaries, politicians, other civil rights leaders, celebrities. He was incredibly brave. And I wanted to close it out with this because, when you don't have children, people tend to think that you don't have a legacy, that there's no future generation that you influenced. And that's not the case. And I think the words that he spoke at the funeral really show what she means to us and the next generation in her family, and the legacy I think she would want all children who she loved to know about her. So if you don't mind playing that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dante Green, and I'm representing the Edward family. I would like to start off about talking about what she did for the children. We all know that she didn't have any children, but she loved them, and they loved her too. Every time a child would come around, she would have a big smile on her face, happy to see them. She would have a big smile on her face, happy to see them. She had her own institution called the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development and a program called Pathway to Freedom. Rosa Parks has inspired many people and will inspire many more. She has showed us that you can win in this victorious war called life. She has taught me that don't take no stuff from nobody. Thanks to Rosa Parks' courageous action and the Montgomery citizens who worked together, they made a bus boycott and the buses were desecrated. The buses didn't have any customers because all of the Montgomery citizens would not get on the bus to work. They will walk or catch a ride from other cars. Rosa Parks, being around her was like being around an angel. So sweet and so soft and so quiet. She had like a quiet strength. She was quiet but strong, a strong Black woman. And I will miss her dearly. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. That closes it out. We really appreciate you hearing our stories. I'm so happy to share this with you all. I always say this is the hardest working branch ever, just full of dedicated and passionate people. So I'm proud to be a part of the branch. If you live and work in Fairfax County and you're not a member, please consider joining. And with that, we'll close it out. Thanks, everyone.
Hello. Miss Lenore, can you change this? I don't even see myself. But anyway, Jasmine, do you think your grandmother Ms. Williamson, do you think you can answer maybe 2 or 3 questions from the audience?
Yes.
Okay, less,
Okay.
and then 2 more, and then that we have to go.
Okay, I'll be brief. First of all, thank you both. For many of us, certain age, and Ms. Parks is a symbol of the civil rights movement. But this kind of, oral history here just puts such a human touch on it that, I'm very touched by. And I wanted to, I appreciate learning about her. And what I really appreciate, Jasmine, is how you gave the other people their flowers. Because I wasn't going to say anything, but I wasn't sure whether you were going to mention Claudette Colvin. But, I really respect you all for doing that, because there were so many other Black women, as part of the resistance or the civil rights movement at that time that, history has never recognized. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I always do, every time I've been asked to speak, I make sure, especially Claudette, because she's the most known, that she also is acknowledged. That's very important.
Any more questions or comments?
This is Lenore.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say my favorite part is seeing the love that your grandmother has for you on her face when you talk. It is really just wonderful to see.
Uh-oh, what just happened?
I froze them up. Here she is.
Yeah, they froze.
Is it back? Okay, yeah, it's back. Let's see.
Jasmine, y'all froze.
They're unfrozen now. Well, thank you. This was so exciting. I've learned so much. Ms. Williamson, thank you for sharing your granddaughter with us and your stories. Jasmine is absolutely phenomenal. You should just be proud. You will be in awe of her if you saw her, the work that she does for the community, the work that she does just for her sorority, she's just a jack of all trades, master at all. She's a woman of many hats, and that's a testament to what you instill in her and her parents, as well as what she witnessed watching Queen Mother Rosa Parks, because she is really carrying that torch. So you all should just be very, very proud of the woman that she is, and the woman that we get to see all the time. So thank you so much, Jasmine. Thank you so much, Queen Mother. And that would conclude our general membership meeting for March and our Women's Day, our Women's History Month. Again, thank you. Ms. Lenore, you can stop recording.